Welcome to the heart of Europe. Today, we're diving into the ongoing Russian war against Ukraine, a crisis that's been unfolding for years with no end in sight. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has evolved significantly over time, marked by fluctuating military capacities, strategic adaptations, and geopolitical maneuvers. The increasing size of Russian forces and the simultaneous depletion of Ukrainian defense capabilities paint a complex picture of the war's current trajectory and prospects. This episode delves into the nuanced aspects of these developments, exploring the implications for both sides and the broader international community. Since the inception of the war, the Russian military presence in Ukraine has seen a significant and continuous increase. Initially mobilizing around 150,000 troops, Russia augmented its forces with additional levies from the occupied regions of Luhansk and Donetsk, bringing the total to approximately 220,000 troops. These forces were seen as expendable by the Russian command, tasked with the dirtiest and most dangerous operations. Following this initial mobilization, Russia embarked on a messy but crucial phase of force generation. By mid-2023, Russian forces had expanded to approximately 420,000 troops. By August of the same year, this number had risen to 450,000, and by early 2024, the count had reached around 470,000. As of mid-2024, the Russian troops' strength stands at approximately 510,000, despite significant losses. The ability to sustain multiple axes of attack has allowed Russian forces to incrementally gain ground, even without overwhelming Ukrainian units decisively. This multifaceted approach creates persistent pressure on Ukrainian defenses, forcing them to stretch their capabilities thin across various fronts. Russia's focus on air defense suppression has exposed gaps in Ukrainian air defenses, leading to a higher rate of successful strikes and a dramatic increase in the effectiveness of Russian long-range fires. The commander-in-chief of Ukrainian forces recently asserted that time is on Ukraine's side, with expectations of improved positions as the conflict continues. However, this optimism contrasts with observable trends favoring Russia. The Russian military is currently producing more equipment and generating more troops, suggesting a short-term advantage. Nonetheless, this growth is not indefinite. Projections indicate that Russia may reach the peak of its force expansion and equipment output by late 2024, with sustained advantages into early 2025. After this period, logistical and operational challenges are likely to hinder further growth, potentially leading to a plateau or even a decline in Russian military effectiveness. The ongoing conflict is fundamentally a war of attrition, where the side that can sustain its losses and continue to field effective combat forces will have an advantage. Both personnel and equipment losses are crucial metrics in this context. While Russia has managed to sustain and exceed its recruitment targets, the loss of officers has particularly hampered Russia's capacity to conduct complex operations at scale. Equipment losses, while significant, present a slightly different picture. Russia has managed to sustain sufficient output to maintain operations this year and potentially through the next. However, this sustainability is contingent on their existing stockpiles, and once these are depleted, refurbishment and new production will slow down, impacting their operational capacity. The attrition of equipment, especially armored vehicles and tanks, is a critical factor. Russia's ability to produce and refurbish tanks and armored vehicles has enabled it to maintain operations, but this is not a sustainable long-term strategy. The loss of equipment is harder to mitigate than personnel losses, and infantry alone cannot sustain effective military operations without the support of armored vehicles and tanks. The exact ratio of personnel and equipment losses between Russia and Ukraine remains classified. Ukraine, in particular, has strong reasons to keep its casualty figures confidential to prevent the enemy from gaining strategic insights and to maintain morale. Publicly available data on Russian losses is more abundant, but the complete picture remains obscured by the lack of information on Ukrainian losses. Ukraine aims to secure a lasting peace, ensuring its sovereignty and independence. The current strategic dynamics complicate this goal. A mere ceasefire is not a viable solution for Ukraine, as it would likely leave the country economically devastated, politically unstable, and vulnerable to future Russian aggression. A lasting peace for Ukraine will require credible security guarantees from international partners. The Budapest Memorandum of the past failed to provide such guarantees, and any new agreement must be more robust and enforceable. With these guarantees, Ukraine can confidently negotiate a ceasefire. Furthermore, Ukraine must regain sufficient territory to ensure its economic viability. The recent release of U.S. aid has provided Ukraine with a crucial lifeline, but the strategic decisions made this summer will be pivotal in determining the future trajectory of the conflict. Expanding industrial output, rationalizing production, and ensuring a coherent supply chain within NATO are essential steps that need to be taken promptly. Delays in execution could result in missed opportunities, potentially leading to a more negative outlook for Ukraine. The training process for Ukrainian forces has been a subject of scrutiny and debate. Unlike NATO countries, Ukraine's training regimen involves basic weapons familiarization and fitness at training areas, followed by tactical training within their assigned units. This approach, while pragmatic given the circumstances, has limitations. Units under heavy pressure may curtail training, leading to varying levels of preparedness among troops. Western military aid and training initiatives, such as those proposed by France, aim to enhance Ukrainian capabilities. However, discrepancies between Western training standards and the realities of the Ukrainian battlefield pose challenges. For instance, safety protocols in Western training environments may prevent the full integration of combat scenarios, limiting the realism of the exercises. Additionally, the logistical complexity of transporting troops and equipment out of Ukraine for training abroad hampers the scalability of these programs. Western military support remains pivotal for Ukraine's defense strategy. Despite criticisms that Western trainers might lack the battlefield experience of their Ukrainian counterparts, the structured training provided by NATO countries offers valuable insights, particularly at higher operational levels. Effective communication and coordination between Western trainers and Ukrainian brigade commanders are essential to ensure compatibility and coherence in training outcomes. The French initiative to send instructors to Ukraine represents a significant step in addressing these challenges. Training within Ukraine allows for better integration of personnel and equipment, minimizing disruptions and maximizing the relevance of the exercises. However, deploying foreign military instructors in an active conflict zone entails considerable risks and political implications. NATO's rearmament and the need for a credible deterrent against Russia is a critical component of Ukraine's long-term security strategy. There is a misconception that donating military equipment to Ukraine diminishes NATO's capabilities. In reality, enhancing Ukraine's defense directly contributes to NATO's strategic goals by ensuring that Russia faces substantial resistance, thus preventing it from achieving its objectives easily. The focus on production capacity is essential. Today's support for Ukraine can evolve into enhanced NATO capabilities in the future, creating a credible deterrent and making any security guarantees to Ukraine more substantial. One of the most daunting challenges for the Ukrainian government has been the articulation and management of its military and strategic objectives. This delicate task involves maintaining public confidence in the armed forces of Ukraine, AFU, and in the government itself while avoiding the pitfalls associated with setting firm dates or clear commitments. Publicly declared objectives can be exploited by adversaries. For instance, declaring a strategic goal, such as fortifying Bakhmut, allows the Russians to concentrate their efforts on undermining that specific objective, thereby imposing significant costs on the AFU. This dynamic underscores the importance of strategic flexibility and discretion, particularly in an environment where the enemy is constantly monitoring and adjusting its tactics in response to Ukrainian declarations. The ultimate objective for Ukraine, as articulated by many, is achieving a lasting peace. However, the feasibility of this goal is highly questionable under the current circumstances. Lasting peace might necessitate either a fundamental change in Russia's political landscape or Ukraine's accession to NATO, both of which appear unrealistic in the near term. Instead, a more pragmatic approach might involve preparing for an extended period of tension and intermittent conflict. This approach, while unpalatable, recognizes the likelihood that Russia will continue to pose a threat, necessitating a state of perpetual readiness and resilience for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has suggested transforming Ukraine into a big Israel, a nation that, despite not being part of a major alliance, maintains a high degree of militarization and enjoys substantial support from international partners. This model, however, requires significant economic transformation and sustained international financial support, which might be politically challenging for Ukraine's allies to maintain over the long term. Ensuring Ukraine's survival and resilience thus involves not only military preparedness but also a robust economic foundation capable of sustaining prolonged military expenditures. The Ukrainian government faces the challenge of articulating a clear path to victory while managing the expectations of its population and international partners. The support of Western countries is crucial, not only in terms of military aid but also in providing the political and economic backing necessary to sustain the conflict and rebuild post-war Ukraine. From the Russian perspective, the conflict must be seen as a sustainable endeavor. As long as the Russian leadership believes in a potential victory, they will continue their aggressive posture. However, if the conflict becomes an indefinite quagmire with diminishing returns, Russia may be forced to reconsider its position. Russia's long-term sustainability in the conflict is also tied to its economic resilience and the political stability of the regime. Economic sanctions and internal pressures could eventually erode Russia's capacity to sustain the war, creating an opening for diplomatic negotiations. However, this scenario is contingent on the conflict protracting beyond the immediate future, potentially into late 2025 or early 2026. Operationally, the Russian offensive towards Kharkiv, although not achieving all its tactical goals, managed to draw significant Ukrainian reserves, thereby affecting Ukraine's ability to defend other fronts. This strategy of forcing Ukraine to overstretch its forces is a deliberate attempt to create vulnerabilities elsewhere along the front line. The ongoing mobilization and the need for equipment and training are critical to Ukraine's ability to not only defend but also mount effective counteroffensives. Ukraine faces significant challenges in terms of manpower and mobilization. The immediate need is to replace battlefield losses and strengthen existing units, while simultaneously forming new units capable of defending various axes and regenerating offensive capabilities. This requires a delicate balance, ensuring that the immediate reinforcements do not deplete the reserves needed for future operations. Effective mobilization, training, and equipping of new forces are crucial for sustaining Ukraine's military effectiveness in the long term. Beyond the overt conflict, Russia has been actively engaged in unconventional warfare aimed at undermining Western stability and cohesion. This covert war includes cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and various subversive measures designed to weaken the resolve and unity of Ukraine's international supporters. Understanding and countering these tactics is an integral part of the broader strategy to support Ukraine and deter further Russian aggression. In conclusion, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is a multifaceted struggle with significant implications for regional and global stability. The evolving dynamics of military capacity, strategic objectives, and international support will continue to shape the course of the war. Both Ukraine and its allies must navigate these complexities with strategic foresight and resilience to achieve a sustainable and just resolution.